Join us today as we give a little bit of love to the unsung heroes of scalable endpoint management, computer groups. Welcome back to Tanium Basics, a Tanium Tech Talk sub-series where Jesh and I talk about some of the basics around Tanium, try to educate and try to make sure people are enabled to use the Tanium platform, even on the most basic level. With me today, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Jesh Sachs.
Alex, thanks so much. I want to say it's a sunny day over here, the first one in a while. So I spent the last hour before we started recording sitting down to just really get my mind in the space for computer groups. And I'm excited to talk about this because, like you said, it is one of those unsung hero things. We use computer groups in pretty much everything we do in Tanium, but they're not something that you consciously think about all that often. So I'm excited to dive in and show kind of our new learners the power of computer groups, what they even are, and get ourselves oriented around this whole new concept.
Jesh, that is awesome. I'm so glad that it's warm for you. It is not warm at all where I am. But I am glad that you brought up computer groups because, when I start to think about it, what if I needed to send out a patch to 1,000 machines, right? Without Tanium and how these things are built on the back end, which is what we're learning about today, what if I had to target, 100 machines individually? We definitely don't want to do that, right? We want a method to speed these things up. We're all about efficiency here. So let's get started today talking about computer groups.
Yes, absolutely. So, computer groups, I would say, are one of those basics. Like last time we talked about navigation, how do we navigate? Next, computer groups, it's a building block, right? To everything that we do. So, whether you're doing something like pushing out a question action to endpoints, like if we're talking about patches, deploying security tools, we want a good and easy way to group computers together in something that makes sense, whether that is by operating system, by department in my organization, or by some unique characteristic. And computer groups let us do exactly that and kind of answer that who question of when we're going to target something or even manage something. Who are we targeting this to? Who, in terms of what endpoints do you have the permissions to manage? All of that is defined by a computer groups. All right, so let's look at some of these computer groups. I'm going to go to administration and computer groups. All right, and once we're at the computer groups page, we get to see all of these default computer groups that Tanium provides out of the box for us. And as I'm looking at this list, my eyes are caught immediately, first off, by the name. Everything makes sense. These are all pretty standard. We're naming by operating system. But then our expression. So, Alex, I'm going to kick this back over to you. Talk to me about what this expression is doing for us.
Yeah, so Josh, this expression is actually what's really filtering down to determine what's in that computer group, right? You can almost think of it like our questions, like especially the right side of the question where we're saying we want to get this data from these devices. So you can see here, like most of these are using operating system, right? So if a computer has been deemed to have an operating system of Windows or CentOS or AIX and specific versions, those can be broken down into computer groups, consolidated into computer groups for future use.
Awesome. I love it. Just even jumping down into some of those that you said. So, like all Windows, I'm going to go for our all Windows workstations and see if that's going to let me filter. All right, here we go. So, our expression is Windows OS type equals Windows workstation. So, like you said, super easy. These are the same sensors that we use in our questions, and this defines a group of computers. So, if I click on that group, I can actually get a preview. Let me go ahead and scroll down a little bit here of everything that matches and would be a member of this group. In this case, that's 83-ish devices in demo. And all of these evaluate this little clause here is true. Um, how do we use these? Computer groups. They're all over the place. I'm just thinking top of my head, I have Windows workstations. This is something I could assign management rights to. Let's say, Alex, you are someone who should be managing Windows workstations, and I'm not a Windows person. Maybe I'm a Mac person, so I should be managing Mac workstations. And we divvy things up like that. Computer groups can be used in our role-based access control to define, oh, you would like to, we can assign you this computer group and we might assign me all Mac workstations. And now all of a sudden, using a simple expression in group, we now can see a completely different set of endpoints based off of using that computer group as part of role-based access control. It gets more fun than that though, because we can use computer groups for all sorts of other targeting. Oh goodness. What's a good one that we could show off?
I mean, truthfully, my favorite and one example that I love pulling from my history, I feel so old, but when I used to work in a help desk, for instance, our finance department had very specific
Mhm.
software that they would need installed, or my personnel department would have very specific software that they needed installed. So we can actually create computer groups that are dynamic, right? So I can say, I need a computer group where the computer name starts with finance or starts with legal or starts with medical. And we can have those computer groups broken down and ready for us so that when we go to deploy, for instance, and I want to create a deployment and say I want to push out TurboTax to my finance department, right? I can actually use that computer group as targeting for that deployment in order to easily make sure the software that I want to get out goes to the exact machines I want them to go out to.
Is fabulous. And I'm glad you called out that we can do the custom piece in the groups. I actually want to show that off here. So I'm going to go back into our administration and computer groups and select to create a new computer group. Now I can name it whatever I'd like here. I can name this, our Tech Talks testing group. Now, it is important if you're doing this in production, please use a name that makes sense. If I say, Jesh testing, or I just had peanut butter, so I say this is my peanut butter computer group. I've seen weird names. Don't do that. Name it something that makes sense if you're creating a computer group. But then we can go into our filter builder. Similar to things like our question builder, we can use all of those sensors and literally anything that you can ask a question on. So let's do something here like custom tag, or we could do something like an enhanced tag. Or to your point earlier, if we're getting Active Directory or other information about the endpoint, we could do it based off the department that that endpoint's in. And I could create this logic saying, hey, if I put this tag or if it's in my legal department, let's add everyone to this group. Now, what makes this fun is this is dynamic. So if I say I want a group with custom tags containing legal, any endpoint that matches that should have it. Right now, no one's in this group. I create it, it's empty. What happens if tomorrow I come in here and add all these custom tags to maybe 10 machines, Alex?
Then those groups actually get tagged with your legal tag and they get added to this group so we can use them for future purposes, for software or for pushing out software or any of these other actions we can do within Tanium.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I love that because this is dynamic. And to your point earlier, when you're talking about what happens if we manage things one by one, every time I need to take an action, I need to create and write down a list of computers and then make sure they're all in there. Well, let's do away with that nonsense. Let's do something like a tag or a dynamic criteria that as endpoints come online that match this, they now are part of that group. So as your environment changes and scales, these groups will change and scale with you to be able to account for any of your new endpoints. So that's awesome. What if I don't want that dynamic though? Because I know we have another kind of group. We've got our dynamic ones.
Yeah, so we do have manual groups, Josh. I know that's what you were alluding to. Generally, even professionally, in this business, you generally don't stick to static groups, right? Things change, computer names change, computers go away, new ones come on. Um, this is generally not the best way to try and administer large amounts of computers, right? And another big issue with this is because it's not dynamic, that adds a whole nother issue, right? Because once we create this computer group within Tanium, we can't change that particular definition, right? We can come back in and edit the computer group. So you mentioned making it, Jesh's peanut butter group or something like that. We can fix that later on, but we can't fix the actual definition later on. So yes, we definitely recommend sticking with dynamic computer groups.
Exactly. So if we had a group that said Tech Talk 1.lab.local, and this was my actual host name, I could say that. But tomorrow you go in and you rename that machine from in our little demo environment, and now my manual group is outdated. It would be much better to maybe this is a naming convention that we put into a filter builder, and we say, well, if the computer name contains Tech Talk, add it to this group. That's the way to do it. Much less manual overhead, much more kind of dynamic, scalable, all the things we want within Tanium.
All right, so really, really quick, Josh. I know some people might be curious. I want to see an example. Like we used those organizational computer groups, right? So like if I wanted to use that in deploy, say I wanted to push software out only to my finance people or whatever, can you show me how I would quickly go to the deploy module, create a deployment, and how easy it is to use computer groups for targeting?
Absolutely. Let's go there. So let's go to modules, deploy and deployments. And then we are going to create a deployment. All right. So when we're creating a deployment, like you said, we may need to deploy, I don't know, a bundle of software. And you can see here right where we'll use those computer groups in our targeting criteria. So I'm going to select our computer group button here. And then, so I'm going to select our computer group button there. And then, as you can see, we get this computer group modal pop up. And this has all of the different groups available to me. So let's say, like you said, I wanted to use one of the pre-configured groups. I may just select that group. Maybe I want to deploy this to all Windows 11. Maybe we have a dynamic group like legal. We could choose that one as our targeting group as well. I'll go ahead and save this. And then I get right away that information about, okay, this is your target group, how many endpoints are in it, who's online, all of that fun stuff. Super easy, super straightforward. You do the same thing in patching. If you're managing, like enforcing a BitLocker policy, maybe you're managing the security tooling within Tanium. Pretty much everywhere you go, you're going to see the option to target things by computer groups, which I think is one of the reasons it's so important to actually kind of have your head wrapped around, wait, what are these little groups? Why are they so important? Why do we need them? And how do they help me? So, to recap here, we have your computer groups, which is literally just a group of computers that either is a dynamic group that matches a specific set of criteria or a manual list. Like Alex said, we don't like using those. Those become really hard to manage and keep up with. And then those groups are used in things like deploy to do these deployments. They're used across the entire Tanium estate, whether we're doing patching, security, even file integrity monitoring. We use this to target and tell endpoints who should do what, which is why it's so important to understand what these groups are and how to use them in Tanium. So, my big takeaway for all of our viewers is if you're not familiar with your organization's computer groups, because we've been showing you our default out of the box Tanium computer groups, right? Your organization probably has some ones that are more customized and make more sense to you. They might be based off department, off of different access controls. Jump into, if you have the permissions, that administration and computer groups and take a look at the groups that your organization has and kind of try to start thinking through, oh, why do we have this group? Where do I use this other one? To get yourself familiar with your environment and the options that you have in targeting things.
Jesh, thank you so much for that rundown. Thank you to all the Tech Talk viewers joining us. And thank you very much. This has been Tanium Basics, grouping with intent. We can't wait to see you next time.